Laura Winters watched the stars blur outside the viewport as the ship Defiance pushed beyond light speed. She had never imagined being chosen for this mission, especially after the last diplomatic team had failed so completely to impress the Galactic Council, but here she was, the last hope for Earth to gain recognition among the stars. Captain Maya Reeves approached Laura with a datapad, her face serious. As always, these aliens do not think much of us. She said, her voice low, so the crew could not. Here they see humans as primitive, barely worth acknowledging. We need something to change their minds. Laura nodded, taking the datapad, scanning the information about the 12 major species that formed the Council, each one with biological or technological advantages that made humans seem like children in comparison. Some breathed toxic gas. Others lived for centuries. A few had natural armor or could regrow limbs. Humans had none of these impressive traits. We have something they lack. Laura said, determination. In her voice, we adapt faster than any species they have encountered. When faced with impossible situations, we find solutions others would never consider. She believed this completely, having studied the Council archives that detailed thousands of years of alien history where change happened slowly, deliberately. The ship shuddered slightly as it dropped out of light speed, revealing the massive Council station orbiting a neutral star. The structure was beautiful, crystalline sections reflecting, starlight connected to rotating rings that housed representatives from hundreds of worlds. Laura felt her heart beating faster as the reality of her mission sank in. She alone would speak for all of humanity. Permission to dock granted, but restricted. To Level 3 access only came the transmission, the alien voice sounding bored, almost dismissive. Captain Reeves frowned at the insult level. 3 was for unproven species barely above quarantine protocols, but she nodded to her pilot to proceed. Anyway, Laura prepared herself, checking her simple blue uniform with the Earth emblem one last time. Unlike the other species who wore elaborate ceremonial garments, humans had chosen practical clothing. Another difference that set them apart, she carried only a small communication device containing all her research and presentation materials. The docking procedure completed with a soft thump and hiss as airlocks engaged. Laura stood at the entrance with Captain Reeves and 2 security officers, the minimum escort allowed by protocol. The door slid open, revealing their welcoming committee. Though welcome was hardly the right word. Commander Zalara of the Centauri fleet stood nearly 8 feet tall, her scaled skin shimmering with iridescent patterns that shifted with her mood, currently showing patterns that Laura recognized as annoyance. Behind her stood representatives from the Dravasi and Proxima Collective, similarly imposing in their own ways. Welcome to Central Station, Ambassador Winters. Zalara said, the translation device making her clicking speech understandable. You will be escorted to the observer section until the Council calls for your presentation. Her 6 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture Laura knew was meant to intimidate. Laura stepped forward, unintimidated, meeting the alien's gaze directly. Thank you, Commander. I look forward to addressing the Council, she said, keeping her voice steady despite the obvious disdain directed at her. The alien seemed momentarily surprised by her confidence, then made a sound that might have been amusement. The human delegation was led through massive corridors designed for beings much larger than themselves. Everywhere they walked, aliens of various species turned to stare, some whispering to each other, some making gestures that needed no translation to understand their mockery. Laura ignored them, focusing instead on memorizing the layout of the station, noting security protocols and access points, information that might prove useful. The observer section was little more than a waiting room with basic amenities designed for various physiologies. Captain Reeves looked around with barely concealed anger. They treat us like children, she muttered, checking the water dispenser with suspicion before taking a drink. Laura used the time to review her presentation one last time. Though she knew the material by heart, she had studied every failed attempt by previous human ambassadors, understanding where they had gone wrong. They had tried to impress the Council with human achievements which seemed minor compared to species that had been spacefaring for millennia. Instead, Laura planned to focus on humanity's unique perspective, what they could offer that other species could not: adaptability, innovation, the ability to find unconventional solutions. This approach might not work either, but it was different enough to perhaps catch the Council's attention. Hours passed before a Proxima aide finally appeared. To summon Laura, the Council will hear your petition now. Ambassador, she will be permitted 15 minutes to present her case. The telepathic voice echoed directly in their minds, making Captain Reeves wince at the intrusion. Laura followed the aide. Alone as protocol dictated, the massive council chamber opened before her, a circular room with tiered seating, rising high above the central platform, where she would stand representatives from all 12 major species and dozens of minor ones filled. The seats, their combined attention making the air feel heavy with judgment. High Chancellor Elora of the Proxima Collective called the session to order, her telepathic voice reaching every mind. Present, the mental touch cold and formal, we gather, once more to evaluate the petition of Earth for upgraded status. The Chancellor projected, let it be noted this is the 18th such petition, their previous attempts having been found lacking. Laura took her position on the central platform, looking small and fragile compared to the beings surrounding her. But her stance was confident, her expression determined. She activated her communication device, projecting a holographic display of Earth, slowly rotating above her. Esteemed members of the Council, Laura began. My name is Laura Winters, representing Earth and all humanity. I stand before you not to boast of achievements you find insignificant, nor to compare our young civilization to your ancient ones, but to offer a perspective that your combined wisdom might benefit from. The chamber remained silent, though Laura could sense skepticism radiating from many of the representatives. Continue. Ambassador Winters, Chancellor Elora projected, but be aware that we have heard many human speeches before. They have all failed to demonstrate sufficient value to the Council. Laura nodded, her expression unchanged. She had expected this response. Humanity has existed as a spacefaring species for less than 2 centuries, she acknowledged. While many of you have explored the stars for millennia, this is not a disadvantage as you believe, but perhaps our greatest strength. Murmurs spread through the chamber, some sounding like laughter, others like dismissal. Laura continued undeterred, changing the holographic display to show moments from Earth history in rapid sequence. Because we have faced extinction-level threats repeatedly throughout our development, we have learned to adapt with unprecedented speed. The Dravasi representative interrupted, his crystalline form catching the light as he moved. Speed is irrelevant, Ambassador. When the direction is incorrect, humans consistently make the same mistakes, repeating cycles of violence and destruction, despite claiming to learn from history. Laura turned to face him directly, respectfully. Ambassador, our history shows otherwise. When humans faced global climate disaster, we transformed our entire energy infrastructure in a single generation. When deadly pandemics threatened our species, we developed new medical technologies in months, not centuries. Our greatest strength is not our technology, but our refusal to accept failure as final. Commander Zalara made a clicking sound that translated as derision. Yet you come here seeking our approval, our technology, our protection. This seems contradictory. Ambassador Winters, her scales flashing patterns of skepticism. Before Laura could respond, alarms suddenly blared throughout the chamber, lights shifting to pulsing red and automated. Voice announced a containment failure in the research sector. Level 4 biohazard containment breach. Evacuation protocols initiated. Atmosphere venting in 30 minutes. The Council erupted into chaos. Some representatives shouting orders, others freezing in apparent shock. Chancellor Elora attempted to establish order, but the panic was spreading too quickly, even among species that prided themselves on logical thinking. The threat of the Malcori experimental virus was too great. Laura realized this was not part of her scheduled presentation, but perhaps it was the opportunity she needed to demonstrate exactly what humanity could offer in the face of crisis. She moved quickly toward a control terminal, while others focused on evacuation. This is the moment, Laura thought to herself as she began accessing station systems that would normally be restricted to her. This is how humanity will prove its worth, not through words, but through action when facing impossible odds. Laura worked quickly at the terminal, her fingers flying across the alien interface as warning sirens continued to blare throughout the council chamber. The Malcori virus was designed to adapt to any biological system, making it the perfect weapon, or the perfect disaster if it escaped containment. which it now had. Chancellor Elora was attempting to coordinate an evacuation. Her telepathic voice strained as she projected instructions to the panicking representatives, but Laura could see the flaw in their approach. They were following standard protocols which would spread the virus further through the air circulation systems. Commander Zalara noticed Laura accessing the terminal, storming over with fury evident in her scale patterns. "What are you doing, human? This is restricted access." Her voice boomed over the chaos around them, her clawed hand reaching to pull Laura away. "I can stop this," Laura replied without pausing her work. "The virus adapts to counteragents, but it follows predictable mutation patterns. I studied the research while preparing for my presentation." She continued bypassing security protocols using techniques that clearly surprised the commander. "You studied our classified research." Zalara hissed, her eyes narrowing in suspicion. Laura nodded. "Still working. Humans always prepare for worst-case scenarios. We study everything available to us, including research your scientists believed was secured." She pulled up containment protocols and station systems. The station computer announced 20 minutes until atmospheric venting, a last resort measure, designed to kill the virus by exposing it to the vacuum of space. But Laura knew this would fail. The virus could remain dormant in microscopic ice crystals, only to be reactivated when the station was repressurized. "I need your authorization code to access environmental controls," Laura said, looking up at Zalara, her voice calm despite the chaos surrounding them. The commander hesitated, suspicion warring with the recognition that the human might actually have a solution, while council members argued or fled. "What do you intend to do?" Zalara asked, her tone slightly less hostile. "The virus adapts to any countermeasure our scientists have tried." Every approach. Laura nodded, pulling up molecular diagrams of the virus structure. "Not every approach," she said. "Your scientists think linearly. They try to destroy the virus directly. I want to accelerate its adaptation cycle, push it to evolve so quickly it destabilizes its own structure." She pointed to specific parts of the molecular diagram. "Humans understand adaptation because we have always had to adapt to survive." Remarkably, Zalara entered her authorization code, giving Laura access to station environmental systems. The human immediately began reconfiguring atmospheric composition, introducing elements that would interact with the virus structure in ways the alien scientists had not considered. "I need access to the containment lab feeds," Laura said, working faster as the countdown continued. The main display showed the virus particles mutating as they encountered Laura's atmospheric modifications, but instead of becoming resistant, they were changing too rapidly, losing structural integrity. As she pushed their adaptation rate beyond sustainable limits, "It's working," she said as the emergency lights shifted from red to amber. "The virus is breaking down." 15 minutes until atmospheric venting, the station computer announced. But Laura could see the virus concentration in the air was already decreasing by the time the council representatives realized what was happening. Laura had nearly neutralized the threat completely. How Chancellor Elora projected, appearing beside Zalara, her telepathic voice tinged with disbelief. "Our scientists have worked on containment protocols for years without finding a solution. How did you develop this countermeasure so quickly?" "I didn't develop it now," Laura explained. "Continuing to monitor the virus levels, I prepared for this possibility before coming aboard your station. Humans always prepare for the worst while hoping for the best." She adjusted the final atmospheric settings as the virus levels dropped below detection thresholds. The emergency lights shifted to normal illumination. "Virus containment achieved," announced the station computer, canceling atmospheric venting protocols. Laura stepped back from the terminal, finally allowing herself to breathe normally, as council members slowly returned to the chamber, many staring at the small human with new expressions. "You saved the station." Zalara stated the fact, seeming difficult for her to acknowledge. Laura nodded simply. "I did what any human would do in a crisis, adapt and overcome." She replied, "It is what we have always done throughout our history." The council session resumed hours later with a noticeably different atmosphere. Laura now stood before the representatives, who watched her with new attention, some with respect, others with lingering suspicion, but all with awareness that something had changed. High Chancellor Elora called the session to order, the formal tone of her telepathic voice somewhat softened in light of recent events. The petition from Earth for upgraded status will now continue. She projected. Ambassador Winters, you may proceed. Thank you, Chancellor, Laura responded. I believe my earlier point has been demonstrated more effectively than any presentation could show when faced with a crisis. Humans do not freeze or follow failed protocols. We adapt, we innovate. We find solutions where none seemed possible. This is the value we offer to the Galactic Council. The Dravasi representative shifted his crystalline structure, refracting light in patterns that indicated thoughtfulness. We acknowledge your quick thinking saved many lives today, Ambassador. He stated, his previously dismissive tone now measured. But one incident does not establish a pattern. Laura nodded, understanding the skepticism would not vanish immediately. Then allow me to show you our history, she said, changing the holographic display to show key moments from Earth development. Each challenge humans had faced, each adaptation they had made, their rapid technological evolution, compressed into visual data that the Council could process. Unlike other species who evolved in stable environments, humans developed in constantly changing conditions, Laura explained, forcing us to adapt or perish when resources grew scarce. We invented agriculture. When distances became barriers, we created transportation. When disease threatened, we developed medicine, all at speeds that would seem reckless to your cultures. And yet Commander Zalara interrupted. Your adaptations often create new problems. You solve one crisis only to generate another. Is this not a concern for species with longer perspectives? Her scales showed patterns of genuine curiosity now. Rather than dismissal, you are correct. Laura acknowledged, that is our greatest weakness. But also our strength. We learn from failures, iterate. Improve. Each generation builds upon the knowledge of those who came before, advancing faster than species with longer lifespans. Because we must, our mortality drives our innovation. Several council members exchanged glances, communication passing between them in ways Laura could not perceive. Chancellor Alora finally addressed the chamber. The council will recess to discuss this petition privately. She projected. All representatives will reconvene. In one standard cycle, Laura returned to the observer section where Captain Reeves waited anxiously. What happened? She asked immediately. The alarms, the lockdown. We thought you might have been killed. Laura explained the virus breach and her solution. Watching the captain's expression shift from concern to pride, you showed them, she said finally, a smile breaking through her serious demeanor. You showed them exactly what humans do best. Captain Reeves clasped Laura's shoulder warmly. Whatever they decide, you represented Earth perfectly. The waiting period passed slowly. Laura used the time to rest and prepare for either outcome, knowing that even if the council rejected their petition this time, something had changed in how they viewed humanity. The seed had been planted. When Laura was summoned back to the council chamber, she walked with confidence, the massive doors opening to reveal all representatives in their formal positions. Chancellor Elora acknowledged her with a small gesture that seemed almost respectful. Ambassador Winters, the Chancellor projected after careful deliberation, the Council has reached a decision regarding Earth's petition for upgraded status. While some concerns remain about humanity's place in the greater galactic community, we cannot ignore the evidence presented both in your words and your actions during the recent crisis. Laura maintained a neutral expression, though her heart raced, waiting for the formal announcement that would determine Earth's fate. Among the stars representing humanity in this moment felt like the greatest responsibility she had ever carried. Earth is hereby granted provisional membership status, Elora announced, with all rights and responsibilities thereof. This status will be reviewed after one standard cycle based on demonstrated cooperation and contribution to Council initiatives. Commander Zalara will serve as liaison between Earth and the Council during this provisional period. Laura bowed her head in acknowledgement. Thank you, Chancellor. Earth accepts these terms and looks forward to proving our value as members of the galactic community, she replied, keeping her voice steady despite the significance of this moment. After 18 attempts, humanity had finally gained recognition as the formal ceremony concluded. Laura sent a simple message back to Earth: mission accomplished, followed by the details of their new status. She knew this was only the beginning. Humanity would face many challenges integrating with species so different from themselves, but they had earned their chance to try. 3 months after Earth gained provisional status, Laura found herself aboard the Centauri flagship Dominant, preparing for her first diplomatic mission as official human liaison. She had spent weeks studying the conflict between the Dravasi and Malcori, two species whose territories bordered each other, and whose relations had deteriorated into threats of war. Commander Zalara entered Laura's quarters without announcing herself, a habit Laura had grown accustomed to, the tall alien looking down at her with those 6 eyes that seemed to miss nothing. "We will arrive at the neutral station in 6 hours, she stated, her scales showing patterns of concern. "You should reconsider your approach." Laura shook her head, continuing to review the historical data on her display. "Both sides have valid grievances," she replied. "The Dravasi claim the mineral-rich asteroids based on historical charts, while the Malcori need those same resources to sustain their environmental systems. There is room for compromise if both sides can see beyond their positions to their actual needs." Zalara made a clicking sound that Laura had learned indicated frustration. The commander had expected Earth to simply support the Council's majority position, which favored the Dravasi instead. Laura had insisted on studying both perspectives independently, reaching her own conclusions. "These species have been locked in territorial disputes for centuries." Zalara said, her scales shifting to patterns of warning. "The Council assigned this case to test your diplomatic skills, not to actually solve an unsolvable problem. Humans are not expected to succeed here, merely to demonstrate appropriate deference to Council protocols." Laura smiled up at the imposing alien. "Then this will be educational for everyone," she replied. "I did not come all this way to rubber stamp decisions. I came to contribute humanity's perspective, whether that perspective is welcome or not." The commander stared at her for a long moment, before departing without another word. The neutral station orbiting between contested territories was an old trading post repurposed for diplomatic meetings. Laura noted how the two delegations had positioned themselves at opposite sides of the circular chamber, refusing to acknowledge each other directly. Council representatives sat between them, looking grave and formal. Laura took her assigned seat next to Zalara, observing the crystalline structure of the Dravasi representative Kreth, whose faceted body refracted light in patterns indicating hostility. Across from him, the Malcori delegation, led by Seren, appeared as shifting masses of colored fog contained within environmental suits necessary for them to survive in standard atmosphere. "High Chancellor." Elora opened the proceedings, her telepathic voice formal and distant. "The Council recognizes this territorial dispute and has convened to hear arguments from both parties. Before rendering judgment, each side will present their case without interruption," she projected, looking pointedly at both delegations. Kreth spoke first, his crystalline voice ringing through the chamber. "The region known as the Vale has belonged to the Dravasi people since before the Malcori achieved spaceflight," he declared. "Our astronomical charts dating back 12 millennia prove our claim. The minerals within these asteroids are vital to our crystalline technology. Without them, our advancement will stall." The Dravasi representative presented historical evidence, stellar maps, and mining claims, each projected above the central table. For all to see, when he finished his presentation, he shifted his structure in a way that indicated absolute certainty in his position. "Serene of the Malcori," responded, her voice coming through translators, as her environmental suit could not produce sounds in standard atmosphere. "While we respect the Dravasi historical presence in the region," she began, "the changing composition of our homeworld's atmosphere requires specific minerals found only in the Vale asteroids. Without access to these resources, our environmental systems will fail within 2 generations. Laura listened carefully, noting how both sides presented their needs as absolute, their positions as non-negotiable, yet she could see possibilities neither side acknowledged. When both presentations concluded, Chancellor Elora turned to the Council representatives for discussion. Laura remained silent, observing as various species offered their perspectives. The majority opinion quickly became clear. Most council members favored the Dravasi claim based on historical precedent and established galactic law regarding territorial rights. When Elora finally turned to Laura, the chamber grew quiet, curious what the human representative might say. Ambassador Winters, the Chancellor, projected, "Your species has recently joined our proceedings. What is Earth's position on this matter?" Laura could feel Zalara's tension beside her, knowing the commander expected her to support the majority view. Thank you, Chancellor, Laura said, rising from her seat. I have listened carefully to both delegations and to the Council perspectives. I would like to ask both parties a question before stating Earth's position. She turned to face both delegations directly. Have either of you conducted a complete mineral survey of the entire Vale region? Both representatives indicated they had not. Such surveys required resources. Neither wished to commit without guaranteed territorial rights. Laura nodded as if expecting this answer. I would like to propose an alternative approach. She said, one that addresses the core needs of both species rather than focusing solely on territorial claims. The chamber remained silent. As Laura activated her own display showing a modified map of the disputed region, Earth proposes a joint scientific mission. She explained, with representatives from both Dravasi and Malkori, working alongside neutral council scientists, to conduct a comprehensive survey identifying all mineral deposits in the region once complete. The resources could be allocated based on specific needs rather than arbitrary territorial lines. Impossible, Kreth declared, his crystalline structure vibrating. With emotion, the Dravasi will not share sovereign territory. Seren echoed similar sentiments, the colored fog within her suit swirling rapidly in what Laura recognized as agitation. Laura remained calm, continuing her presentation. I understand both your concerns, but consider this approach, she said. Highlighting specific areas in the map, preliminary data suggests the region contains sufficient resources for both your needs, but they are not evenly distributed. A traditional territorial split would likely leave both sides without crucial elements you each require. The room grew tense as both delegations considered her words, perhaps sensing an opening. Laura continued, Earth has experience with resource-sharing agreements, she explained, showing historical examples from human history, where former enemies established collaborative extraction zones with mutual oversight. Such arrangements would be governed by binding council agreements, she added, providing security for both parties. Mining operations could be conducted jointly or in separate zones based on the survey results, but with guaranteed quotas, ensuring both civilizations receive what they need. This approach transforms a zero-sum territorial dispute into a positive, some resource management agreement. Chancellor Elora studied Laura with what seemed like genuine curiosity. An interesting proposal, Ambassador, she projected, but unprecedented in council history. Such collaboration between hostile parties has rarely succeeded. Laura nodded, acknowledging the challenge. That is precisely why Earth proposes to oversee the initial survey and implementation. Laura replied with respect. Our species has extensive experience mediating resource conflicts. Our shorter lifespans give us perspective on the urgency of finding solutions rather than extending disputes across generations. The council chamber erupted in discussion, some representatives dismissing the proposal as naive, others considering its merits. Kreth and Seren withdrew to consult with their delegations. Laura used this time to answer technical questions from council members, explaining how similar agreements had worked on Earth hours. Later, both delegations returned, still wary but noticeably less hostile. Kreth spoke first. The Dravasi find this proposal worthy of consideration provided council guarantees are established protecting our historical claims. Seren added the Malkori would participate in a joint survey if guaranteed access to essential minerals regardless of territorial boundaries. Chancellor Elora seemed surprised by this development, turning to Laura with an evaluative gaze. The council will establish a working group to develop protocols for this joint survey. She projected, Ambassador. Winter's Earth will lead this initiative as proposed, the first test of your species' diplomatic capabilities. Laura nodded, accepting the assignment with appropriate gravity. Thank you, Chancellor. I believe this approach will benefit both parties and the Council, she said, aware that she had just committed to months of difficult negotiations between ancient enemies, but also aware that success would establish humanity's value in ways no military or technological achievement could match. As the session concluded, Commander Zalara approached Laura, her scale pattern showing a mixture of surprise and what might have been reluctant respect. You took an unnecessary risk. She stated the safe approach would have been supporting the majority position. Laura smiled. The safe approach rarely solves the actual problem, Commander, she replied, gathering her materials. I did not come here to be safe, I came to make a difference. Zalara made a sound that might have been amusement or resignation, perhaps both. 1 year into Earth's Provisional Council membership, Laura found herself facing her greatest challenge, yet standing before the Emergency Response Committee as reports came in of a devastating attack on Proxima Colony. The settlement had been hit by unknown forces, leaving thousands dead and critical infrastructure destroyed. Communication with survivors was sporadic at best. This was not a natural disaster. Commander Zalara stated, her scales showing patterns of anger. The weapons signatures matched those used by the Krell, an isolationist species from the Outer Rim, who had rejected Council membership centuries ago, preferring to remain separate and largely unknown Chancellor. Elora appeared via holographic projection, her telepathic voice reaching all committee members. The Council has authorized an emergency response fleet to provide humanitarian aid and secure the colony against further attacks. She announced Commander Zalara will lead the military contingent. Ambassador Winters will coordinate relief efforts. Laura reviewed the damage assessments, feeling the weight of responsibility. This would be the first major crisis where Earth played a central role in the Council response, and she knew many species still doubted humanity's capabilities. The Proxima were telepathic crystalline beings with biology vastly different from humans, requiring specialized care. The response fleet departed within hours, Laura aboard the medical vessel Mercy, while Zalara commanded the defense cruiser Vigilant. From separate command centers, they coordinated the complex operation, Laura focusing on medical and infrastructure needs, while the commander secured the system against potential return of the attackers. As they approached Proxima Colony, Laura gasped at the devastation visible even from orbit. Massive impact craters scarred the settlements. Once beautiful crystalline structures, now shattered buildings reduced to glittering dust. The atmospheric processors damaged, causing toxic gas to build up in the habitat domes. Survivors huddled in emergency shelters, their telepathic distress so powerful it could be sensed even by non-telepathic species aboard the ships. Laura organized the response teams, prioritizing atmospheric restoration and medical care, while defense vessels established a protective perimeter around the colony. The situation is worse than reported, Zalara communicated from the Vigilant sensors, indicate the Krell used experimental weapons designed to disrupt the crystalline matrix of Proxima biology. Laura nodded grimly, checking the medical data coming in from the first teams on the ground. The injured are not responding to standard treatments, Laura replied. Survivors show signs of progressive crystalline degradation. Something is continuing to damage their structures even after removal from the contaminated areas. We need to adapt our approach. Laura coordinated with the medical teams, most of whom had never treated Proxima patients before. The unique biology of the crystalline beings required specialized knowledge studying the injury patterns. Laura noticed something the other medical officers had missed. The degradation followed specific resonance patterns consistent with targeted sonic weapons. We need to establish counter-resonance fields, she instructed the medical teams, downloading specifications to their equipment. The frequency should stabilize the crystalline structures long enough for natural healing to begin. The approach was experimental, based on her understanding of Proxima biology and Earth sound technology, but they had few alternatives. Meanwhile, Commander Zalara led security teams through the damaged colony, searching for survivors and evidence of the attackers. Her reports, growing increasingly concerned, the Krell left virtually no technology behind. She communicated to Laura, this level of operational security suggests military precision beyond what we believed they possessed. Laura worked tirelessly for days, sleeping only when absolutely necessary, as the counter-resonance therapy began showing results, stabilizing the injured Proxima. What troubled her was why the Krell had attacked at all. The isolationist species had avoided contact with the Council for centuries, making this sudden aggression puzzling. On the 5th day, while reviewing security footage recovered from damaged systems, Laura noticed something unusual enhancing a particular sequence. She spotted movement patterns that seemed oddly familiar. Calling Zalara to her temporary command center, she pointed to the enhanced images. These are not Krell movements, she said, indicating the way the attackers moved through the colony. Krell have 6 limbs and significantly different joint structure. These attackers are bipedal, similar to humans, but with longer limbs consistent with Centauri physiology. Solara's scales shifted to patterns indicating alarm that is impossible. She stated the Centauri are founding members of the Council. We would never attack a colony. Laura nodded, understanding the commander's reaction, but focused on the evidence. I am not suggesting official Centauri involvement. She clarified carefully, but possibly rogue elements or someone deliberately mimicking Centauri movement patterns to mislead investigators. The recovered footage shows only shadows and partial images. Not enough for positive identification, but enough to rule out Krell physiology. The commander studied the footage, her eyes narrowing. I will expand our investigation, she said finally, her voice tight with controlled emotion. If someone is attempting to frame my species, they will be found. Laura agreed, offering whatever support the commander needed while continuing to coordinate the medical response. 2 days later, while checking on recovering patients, Laura received an urgent message from Solara, requesting her presence in a secure area of the colony deep beneath the main settlement. Laura followed security protocols, taking 2 guards with her as she made her way through damaged corridors to a sealed chamber where Solara waited. The commander looked troubled, her scale patterns showing complex emotions as Laura entered. I have found something you need to see, Ambassador, she said. Leading Laura to a hidden console, this facility was not on any official colony plans. The console displayed technical specifications for weapon systems Laura had never seen before. Advanced designs incorporating elements from multiple species, including what appeared to be Krell technology, merged with council systems. The implications were disturbing. This suggests the attack was not random. Laura said, studying the data. Someone wanted these research facilities destroyed, and the Proxima researchers eliminated. What were they working on? Here Solara activated another screen showing project files. The facility was developing defensive systems against sonic-based weapons. She explained ironically the very weapons used in the attack. The researchers here had created prototypes that could neutralize such attacks, making any species using those weapons vulnerable. Laura processed this information carefully, the pieces fitting together. This wasn't a random attack or even a territorial dispute. She said someone wanted to ensure these defenses never became operational, which means they planned to use similar weapons elsewhere. Solara finished her scales, now showing patterns of alarm. This attack was preemptive to ensure the success of future attacks. Laura nodded grimly, the implications extending far beyond this single colony. We need to get this data to the Council immediately, Laura said. But we should be careful about how we present it without knowing who might be involved. We can't be certain who to trust. Solara agreed, her manner now showing a level of trust in Laura that would have been unthinkable a year ago. Laura spent the night analyzing the recovered data, looking for clues to the attackers. Identity cross-referencing weapons signatures with known species capabilities while carefully documenting the evidence in ways that would stand up to Council scrutiny. The more she discovered, the more concerned she became. The next morning, Laura and Solara presented their findings to Chancellor Alora in a secure communication. The Chancellor listened silently, her telepathic presence focused and intense. When they finished, she remained quiet for several moments before responding. This information must be brought before the full council immediately, she projected, but with caution. We have a traitor among us, someone with access to advanced technology and military capabilities. Ambassador Winters, I am assigning you and Commander Solara to lead this investigation. Your outsider perspective may be valuable in identifying connections we cannot see. Laura accepted the assignment, understanding its significance for a junior member species to be given such responsibility. Indicated how much things had changed. The Council was beginning to recognize that humanity's different perspective had value, precisely because it was outside traditional galactic thinking. As the relief efforts continued, Laura divided her time between caring for survivors and investigating the attack, working closely with Solara, whose initial suspicion of humans had evolved into something approaching respect. They made an effective team, the commander's centuries of experience complementing Laura's fresh perspective and pattern recognition skills. 3 weeks after the attack, they had compiled enough evidence to present to the Council, tracing the weapons technology, to a consortium of private interests spanning multiple species, all connected to a shadowy organization that seemed to be pushing for war with the Outer Rim territories. Standing before the full council, Laura presented their findings systematically, the evidence implicating several prominent council members in a conspiracy to destabilize the galactic peace. The chamber erupted in denials and accusations, but the evidence was compelling, particularly when Zalara stepped forward to confirm humanity's conclusions. 5 years had passed since Earth first gained provisional status in the Galactic Council. Laura Winters now served as Earth's permanent ambassador, her reputation grown far beyond what anyone might have expected when a single human woman first stood before the massive alien assembly. She had proven humanity's value repeatedly, through crises, diplomatic negotiations, and technological collaborations that leveraged humanity's unique perspective. Today, Laura stood on the observation deck of the New Earth Embassy station, watching as ships from across the galaxy arrived for the ceremony that would formalize humanity's full membership. The massive crystalline structure floated near the original council station, a symbol of how far Earth had come in such a relatively short time. Ambassador Zalara joined her, the Centauri commander, having given up her military position to serve as diplomatic liaison to Earth. Their unlikely friendship had become something of a legend in council circles. The tall alien now stood beside Laura, both looking out at the stars that had once seemed so distant and unattainable to humanity. 5 years ago, I would have wagered my command ship that humans would never achieve full membership, Zalara commented, her scales showing patterns of amusement that Laura had learned to read as clearly as human facial expressions. I have never been happier to be proven wrong. Laura smiled. Our stubbornness grows on people eventually, she replied. Thinking back to all they had accomplished, the Dravasi-Malkori resource-sharing agreement now served as a model for other territorial disputes. The security protocols developed after the Proxima colony attack had exposed a conspiracy that threatened the Council itself and led to significant reforms. Most significant had been the Human Adaptation Initiative and Exchange Program, where Council species sent representatives to live among humans, learning their problem-solving approaches while humans studied with various alien specialists, bringing new techniques and technologies back to Earth. The cross-pollination of ideas had accelerated development for all involved. Chancellor Elora appeared behind them, her telepathic presence announcing her arrival before she spoke the ceremony. Preparations are complete. She projected her mental voice warmer than it had been when Laura first encountered it. The Council awaits Earth's formal petition. Laura nodded her appreciation, turning from the viewport to follow the Chancellor. She wore the formal diplomatic attire of Earth, a simple blue uniform enhanced with symbols representing humanity's achievements since joining the galactic community. Unlike the ornate garments of other species, human clothing remained practical even for ceremonial occasions. Another difference that had once seemed like a disadvantage, but now represented their practical approach. The council chamber had been expanded since Laura first stood there, now accommodating representatives from nearly 300 species, the tiered seating rising in a great circle around the central platform, where Laura would present Earth's final petition. The chamber fell silent as she entered, all eyes, tentacles, sensory organs, and other perceptual apparatuses focusing on the human woman. High Chancellor Elora called the session to order, her telepathic voice reaching every mind present. We gather to consider the petition of Earth for full membership status. She projected Ambassador Winters will present Earth's final case, after which the Council will vote on acceptance. Laura took her position at the center of the chamber, activating the holographic display that showed Earth and its colonies, the small but growing human presence among the stars, still modest compared to ancient spacefaring civilizations, but notable for its rapid development and innovation. Esteemed members of the Council, Laura began 5 years ago. I stood before you asking for recognition of humanity's potential value today. I stand before you not to ask for acceptance, but to acknowledge the partnership we have already built together. She gestured to the display showing key collaborative projects between humans and various council species. The Galactic Council was founded on principles of cooperation, mutual support, and shared knowledge. Laura continued principles that humanity embraces wholeheartedly. In our brief time among you, we have demonstrated not only our willingness to adapt, but our ability to help others adapt as well. The display shifted, showing the outcomes of various human-led initiatives. The Proxima colony now rebuilt, with enhanced defenses, the Dravasi and Malkori working side by side in the once disputed territory. The educational exchanges that had brought thousands of alien students to Earth while sending humans throughout Council space. We do not claim perfection. Laura acknowledged we make mistakes. We sometimes act too quickly or speak too bluntly. Our short lives make us impatient for progress in ways that can frustrate species with longer perspectives. But these same qualities allow us to see possibilities where others might see only obstacles. Laura paused, looking around the chamber at the representatives, many of whom she now knew personally, some as friends, others as respected colleagues, even occasional adversaries. But all part of the community. Humanity had joined our petition for full membership is not about status. She continued. It is about formalizing the relationship we have already built through shared challenges and achievements. The council deliberation was brief compared to earlier petitions. The vote nearly unanimous in favor of acceptance, only a few species abstaining, none opposing when Chancellor Elora announced the result. Her telepathic voice carried tones of genuine pleasure. Earth is hereby granted full membership with all rights and responsibilities thereof. She projected, Ambassador Winters will join the High Council, effective immediately. The chamber erupted in the various sounds of different species, showing approval clicks, whistles, telepathic bursts of color and emotion. Laura accepted the formal credentials that marked Earth's new status with appropriate dignity, though. Inside, she felt like cheering. This moment represented the culmination of everything she had worked toward since that first terrifying day standing alone before alien judges. The reception afterward brought together representatives from across the galaxy, many approaching Laura to offer congratulations or propose new collaborative projects. Commander Zorn of the Dravasi Crystalline Corps formally thanked her for the resource-sharing initiative that had prevented a war with the Malkori representatives. From the Proxima Educational Exchange discussed expanding the program to include more human teachers. Laura moved through the gathering, accepting congratulations while already thinking of next steps. Full membership brought new responsibilities. New opportunities for humanity to contribute. The work had only just begun. Chancellor Elora approached, her telepathic voice private, now reaching only Laura's mind. You have accomplished what many believed impossible, Ambassador. She projected, your species has earned its place among us through actions, not merely words. Laura nodded her appreciation for the acknowledgement. We still have much to learn. Chancellor, she replied, but also much to offer. The exchange goes both ways. That is what makes the council stronger. Elora studied her with an expression Laura had learned indicated thoughtfulness in the telepathic species. The council is changing because of human influence. She observed, some would say too quickly, others would say not quickly. Enough. What does Ambassador Winters say? Laura considered the question carefully. Change is inevitable. Chancellor, she answered, the only question is whether we shape it intentionally or allow it to shape us. Humans have learned to embrace necessary change while preserving essential values. I believe the Council can do the same. Elora seemed satisfied with this response, her telepathic presence showing approval before she moved to greet other guests. Zalara approached, next her scales, showing the complex patterns Laura had come to recognize as pride. The Centauri ambassador had become her closest ally in council politics, their partnership proving that even the most different species could find common ground. The ceremony concludes, but the real work begins. Zalara commented, several council members have already proposed joint initiatives with Earth. They seem eager to benefit from the human perspective. Laura smiled at her friend. And I have a few proposals of my own, she replied. The defense cooperation program we discussed, the medical research initiative. The changes never stop. Zalara made the clicking sound Laura recognized as laughter. That is why you humans fit so well among the stars. The Centauri observed, you never stop moving forward even when the path seems impossible. Laura looked out at the gathering, seeing representatives of civilizations thousands of years older than humanity, now accepting Earth as an equal, not impossible. She replied, just challenging, and humans have always loved a good challenge. Zalara nodded her scales, showing patterns of agreement as both ambassadors turned to continue their diplomatic duties, knowing that while one chapter had closed, another was just beginning. As the reception continued into the night, news of Earth's acceptance spread throughout Council space and back to Earth itself, where celebrations erupted in cities across the planet. The images transmitted back to the Council station, showing humans from all nations, rejoicing in their new galactic status. Laura watched these celebrations from the observation deck, taking a rare moment alone to reflect on the journey that had brought humanity to this point. The challenges they had overcome, the allies they had made, the difference they had already begun to make in galactic affairs.